Hello, everyone. Good evening. How is everyone doing? I understand. I think it's time for a replay, but before that, we have an exciting presentation on repost. So I just wanted to kick off and say, thank you for joining us. Have you felt the need to build a community at your organization? And have you thought it is a slow process? And have you felt the need to increase the knowledge for your cloud developers? Hi, my name is SUP205. I'm the Senior Manager for AWS Knowledge Management.
Yeah, thanks, Sasi. I'm Nitin Tomar. I'm a product manager in AWS. I've been with AWS for 4 years. So today, we'll be talking about how to accelerate your cloud journey and improve your developers' productivity. And the way we're going to do is through knowledge sharing and community collaboration. So this is the agenda we have. First, we'll talk about what are the challenges with knowledge management and community collaboration that we have learned from our talking to our customers, or customers have reached out to us. Then I have exciting news. We'll be introducing a new product, new service to address the challenges that our customers have been telling us. We'll talk about the benefits and features of the service, and then we'll see a demonstration and how you can get started. So let's talk about the challenges. So many of the enterprises or customers like yours, you have a very clear cloud strategy, and your builders, developers are already implementing the strategy. However, what customers are telling us, that builders, they are having discussions, but often siloed. They are collaborating, but it's siloed. They are either collaborating within emails, chats, Slacks, or one-on-one conversations. And those interactions are meaningful. They are solving the issues at that particular moment, whoever has a question. What's challenging is that those interactions have a very short lifespan. Those interactions are not converting into a reusable knowledge. That's what the number one concern that we have heard from many customers. There's a lack of unified knowledge base. There are content available, but it's distributed. There's no source of truth. What is the right content? A developer can find a content at one place and another place as well, but it's hard to tell which one is the right one to use. This is one of the most common themes that customers are saying. Building community is a slow process, and many times it's very slow process. It requires to narrow down a platform. It requires to bring the community on board. It requires content. It requires curated content, trustworthy content. So it's really coming across as a hindrance to accelerating your journey to the cloud. And finally, there are training content. It exists. There are multiple training content exist. However, the training content are not curated or presented in a learning path so that it's easier for developers to consume. Additionally, what we have seen that global knowledge management industry said that knowledge workers are spending 30% of their time searching for just the information, what they're looking for. And almost a third of the time, they're failing to find the right information. Imagine the impact of productivity because of this. To summarize what we have learned from our customers, we have observed ourselves. We have an internal community as well. The senior leadership like yourself and people in your organization at enterprises, they need a new way to equip their builders with training on cloud concepts and drive collaboration. And now this collaboration is within your own team, combined with AWS teams as well, really to define and implement their cloud strategy at scale. How are AWS going to solve a problem for you, our customers, to address these challenges? So I'm very pleased to announce a new product that we launched on November 26th earlier this week. It's called AWS Repost Private. What is it? It is your own private repos to collaborate within your company and with AWS. Now, many of you may know AWS Repost, but what it is, it's a service that we launched 2 years ago at reInvent 2021. It's a community knowledge service managed and hosted by AWS. This is where it's a public community where customers, partners, AWS employees, they come and share knowledge. And it's accessible to everyone. So many of our customers, when they saw public repos, they came to us and they say, can we get a private version of this? So good news, this is what it is. It's a private version for you to manage your community and your content. So with this AWS repos private, it offers a curated content from AWS and a discussion forum that essentially involves your team members as well as AWS team members to collaborate and start sharing knowledge. Let's take a look at the benefits and features of private repos. So with the number one benefit is you can build your cloud community of practice. Or if you already have one, you can further strengthen it using the private repos. It streamlines collaboration and knowledge sharing within your own company and with AWS. You can improve the productivity by centralizing the knowledge. And it becomes a scalable one place to search AWS technology-specific knowledge, which could be your private, specific to your workload knowledge. Additionally, the curated content that's provided by AWS. You can train your teams faster. And it happens through AWS provides the curated training and technical content, which is organized and structured in a way where it's easier for developers to consume. And additionally, the primary benefit is there are discussions going to happen in the private repos. Some of those discussions may not result in a resolution. You or developers can convert those discussions into a support cases, AWS support cases, and can get the response back from the support engineering. And you will have a choice to convert that interaction that's currently logged in a support case to make it available and visible to your community within your private repos. Let's take a look at what are the feature sets. So there are two primary parts of private repos. One is creating a repost and managing it, which really happens in AWS Management Console. And the second is the developer or your builders, a site where they can go and use daily to consume knowledge or collaborate with their colleagues or with AWS employees. So you have a control to access. You decide who can access your private repos. So this service is integrated with AWS Identity Center, which allows you to hook up your identity that developers will be using to log into the private repos, which includes you can have your own SSO, you can bring your own Active Directory or any SAML integrations. And then you can configure it. You can use the branding that your marketing suggests by the look and feel. You can specify a custom subdomain. For example, ABC Corp may want to say that I want to have like abccorp.private.repos.aws for my developers to go and directly access the private repos. And then you can define the roles. There are normal users who can interact, search with the service. And there are admins who configure and set up the process and set up the private repos. And there are moderators who will continue to moderate the content that's happening on the private repos. We have a concept of experts as well. So in your organization, you may have some experts. You may want to designate them as an expert. What they additionally have the capability is to validate answers, which is a huge benefit. When they see an answer which is useful, they can just endorse it. This raises the trust in the content. And answer A versus answer B, if answer B is validated by an expert, it raises the trust for the third person to consuming that, yes, expert has seen the answer. With private repos, you really centralize your AWS knowledge. So the content is organized. It follows a standard taxonomy, which is very similar to what public repos offers. So we have a concept of tags and topics. Tags are AWS services. such as Lambda, EC2, S3. And topics are like grouping of similar services like technologies, like analytics is a topic, serverless is a topic. Additionally, you can create your own custom tags, which may be specific to your application. That's controlled through the admin part. Private repos offers curated content. So AWS will provide curated content for faster onboarding. During the setup process, you will see in the demo, we ask what are your primary use cases. And we have a team of subject matter experts and tech writers who are producing content. We'll publish those content in private repos for your developers to consume in a structured fashion. Additionally, you can create your own private or proprietary content. You can ask questions, create articles specific to your workloads. And we have a concept of selections as well, which is an aggregated knowledge following through or based on a specific topic or a use case. It helps, again, in creating a learning path. Anybody within the private repos can create any of these contents. And then you can scale your private cloud community. This really happens in collaboration with the AWS account team. So AWS TAMs, technical account managers, they get automatically added to this service at the time of creation. But then you have an option to bring in other account team members like solution architects or others, which I highly recommend that you bring them into this private repos so they can provide their guidance. And whatever guidance they are providing is reusable. That's the most important part. They are already providing guidance. They are helping you through the journey. In some cases, it's not getting captured. It may getting lost, and the authenticity or the validation is not happening on those guidance. To engage the community, we offer gamification. So private repos comes with reputation points. Developers love to compete. They earn points. They can provide answers. They earn points. They earn badges. It comes with everything that's offered on the public repos as well. So experts review I talked about. You can designate some senior members who have really good understanding of your workloads, your architecture. They can be explicitly marked as experts. Their profile will display they are the experts. So content posted by them will carry a higher value for anybody else to consume. Then we have notifications. This is a really exciting way to bring back your developers into the private repos. So we offer notifications through emails. Any user can follow either tags, topics, or other community experts to stay notified. If any activity happens, they will get an email. And we have flexibility in how users want to receive emails. They can get an instant email, or they can batch it into a digest for a daily digest or a weekly digest. Let's take a look at how is the user experience going to look like. So this is a high-level flow. I'm going to talk about two high-level persona. One is admin, who is the person responsible for customizing and creating the private repos. The journey starts as like a console admin, somebody who has a write permission in AWS Management Console will go, and they can find the service in Management Console. They will hook up the identity center. They can assign the encryption keys. You can choose AWS provided keys or your own. And this is where they will specify a name. Again, you can call it like it's my ABC Corp repost or XYZ Corp repost. So it's very clear and distinct that it's different from the public repos. The same console admin will assign, they will make an admin for the private repos. And this admin's job is to customize the UI and logo, as you will see in the demo, to make it look clearly distinct, have some identity to your repos as well. And they will have the flexibility to assign roles. This is where they can assign somebody an expert or a moderator. Additionally, what they will do is they will select primary use cases. Let's say if your team is primarily focused on migration or GenAI. Once they will choose those use cases, AWS will provide the curated content that's exclusively available only within private repost. So you will get to see that. And we'll see an exciting demo on that coming up shortly. So at this point, private repost is ready to use by your developers. I talked about TAMs will get additionally added to the repost, but you have a choice. You can ask for more solution architects and others to get added, which can happen any point in time. So once the private repost is ready, what will developers do? They will have a URL, abccorp.private.repos.aws. They can log in using the authentication that console admin set in the previous step. It's going to be the same one. They will complete their profile, and they can upload picture, and they can set their notification settings as well. But it's ready to use for them. They can start searching the content. When they search content, what we have done is there is a very valuable public content that lives on public repost as well. So within the search, we clearly returns the result. This is your private repost results, and this is your public repost results. Public repost results, if they want to consume in full, they will have to go out of private repost and go to the public repost, consume there. However, if they want to have a private discussion on a public content, which is very useful, they can fork off a private thread within your private repost just to have a collaborative discussion. Let's say a Gen AI public content comes out, but you want to see how does it apply to ABC Corp. You can just initiate a discussion within your own private repost. Then selections, we talked about, it's really in assets that you can combine and stitch them together. And you'll see an example of selections as well. Stitch them together for your learners or like beginners to consume, or anybody can consume, or anybody can create those. These are like aggregation offered in a structured manner to you. And it comes with a discussion forum. Anybody can ask questions, comments. They can upvote. They can post articles as well. And one other thing that they can do is, which is really, they can convert a question to a support case. So often it may happen that community is discussing a question and answer, but at some point they may say, oh, okay, we need somebody else to provide a comment. So we have built in a capability that they can convert a thread into a support case inside the private repos. So we have done an integration with AWS Support Center as well. And when they convert it, that thread is logged. Community members can continue to have a discussion, but the communication that's happening between the case, person who has created the case, and support engineer is logged only to a certain roles. And once the case is closed, that role, person having that role has an option to make that correspondence available to other members of the private repost. It's we want to unlock the knowledge that's right now getting trapped in any of the support cases or in one-on-one conversations. What will be the role and the functions of AWS account team? So they will log into the same account team, same private repost. They will use Amazon login, which is Amazon Midway. They will be providing you guidance and content the way they are doing it today. Either probably they are part of some Slack workspaces, some customers use that, or in an email, or an alias of an email. Rather than going through that, hard to search, hard to provide or get any discussion on that, AWS account team will start providing guidance in this private repost. And additionally, if you want somebody to get added to this private repost, if you are talking to like a specialist assay or somebody, TAMs will be your point of contact. They will facilitate the process to get those additional AWS account team members added into the private repost. And it works other way as well. If you want somebody to be taken out of the private repost, TAMs will facilitate that process. So let's see this service in action. So I'll invite Ceci again to take us through the demo.
Thanks, Nitin. So before we jump into the demo, so Nitin mentioned about the 3 pillars on how you can successfully build and scale the community and build the knowledge for your organization. Earlier this week, we did a session, ARC207. Please take a look at it. That shares some of the best practices around how you can build the community, and then how you can use some of the best practices around building the community. So with that, I would love to jump into the demo. So Nitin mentioned about several capabilities that Private Repost offers. So I'll walk you through the functionality. There are 2 demos that we are presenting to you today. One is the admin experience, where admin goes to the console and creates the service. In less than 5 minutes, they can create this service and then launch it. And once it's launched, the developers can start using it, how they can consume content, and all the capabilities that Nitin mentioned. So that I'll be demonstrating those. So to start off, creating your private repost from console. So you can go to AWS console, select services, customer enablement, and then select repost private. And you will land on repost private console homepage. From there, you can click on create repost private. Repost private offers two tiers of pricing. One is a free tier. It's available for free for 6 months with all the standard set of capabilities. The second tier is standard tier. It's $12 per user per month. And you can choose the right tier based on your use case. And in terms of defining the repost private, so you can specify your own name, and then you can provide a description for the service. So this name is visible only to the console admin. This is to recognize the service within the console. And then you can also specify a custom subdomain. So the custom subdomain can be, like Nitin mentioned in his example, like ABC Corp. You can mention, in this case, I'm saying CC as the Cloud Central as a custom subdomain, but you can always define your own custom subdomain. And then we also integrate with AWS key, KMS, key management service. So in order for you to encrypt your data, you can specify a custom key or create a new key, or use an existing key, AMS key. And then in terms of service access, like Nitin mentioned, Repost Private is integrated with Support Center so that you can create support cases from unanswered questions or conversations within your private space. In order to do that, you need to enable service access by specifying a role using IAM, Identity Center. So in this case, I'm selecting an existing role, but you can also choose a specific role. Then tags are optional to recognize your service from billing and other standpoint. And then you can create this private repost by clicking on the Create a Repost button. It takes approximately 30 minutes to create this private repost. And when the repost is created for your organization, you will receive an email notification. So before that, so you will see that there is custom subdomain and AWS generated subdomain. So custom subdomain is by default not approved. So a technical account manager goes in, reviews that it is a valid request to protect our customers' subdomain requests. Like for example, ABC Corp, we want to make sure that it is indeed ABC Corp requesting this. So they will review and validate the subdomain. And then until then, you can use AWS auto-generated subdomain. And you can also integrate with CloudFront and use your own DNS as well. So with that, so now the repost private, your organization-specific repost private is created, and I receive an automated email notification after 30 minutes that the service is created. And then at this point, the service is not really usable. You need to configure the users. So which means basically you need to add users to the service. Repost private is integrated with IAM Identity Center, formerly known as AWS SSO. So using this, you can configure users using IAM Store, which provides a set of users that you can define and link to private repost, or you can link to existing SSO like Active Directory or Okta or some of the other third-party SSO providers. So this is similar to how you manage your existing business applications using IIC. So to add users, in this example, I'm using users from IAM Identity Store. So in this case, select your private repost to which you want to add users, select the users tab, and then click on add users and user groups. You can add individual users or user groups. In this case, I have 3 users, and we're adding that and assigning it to the private repost. At this point, users will be able to access your private repost. It's not only that, you also need to assign an administrator to configure your private repost application. So you can do that by going into users and then specify, select an admin user and then mark them as administrator. So their role gets updated in the service, and then the administrator is now ready to configure your private repost and launch it for your organization. So in the third step, the administrator will go to the actual private repost application, set it up, and configure it in line with your organizational needs. Like Nitin mentioned, you can define your branding, you can define the custom tags, and also you can also classify your organizational knowledge based on that. So in order to do that, you will sign into the application based on the subdomain that you created, custom subdomain, or AWS generated subdomain. And this is the welcome screen with the steps to perform. Once you click on Start Setup, you can specify the title of your private repost. In this case, I want to call it as Cloud Central. You can name it like Knowledge Hub or whatever relevant to your organizational need. And you can also provide a description that will be used to greet your developers in the organization. And then once you specify that, you can also upload the logo for your private repost, your own organization-specific logo, and then choose primary and secondary colors. Primary color is the color used in the header and the navigation, and then the secondary color is used for the buttons. And then you can save and continue. As you can see, the color theme and color scheme has already changed based on my primary and secondary color selection. The next step is adding tags. So by default, AWS standard set of tags are available in your private version of repost. In addition, you can add your custom tags. So like, for example, in this case, I'm adding a few tags like central, and then a couple of other tags like Java and generative AI. So you can create as many tags. You cannot create duplicate tags, and you cannot create tags that starts with AWS or Amazon because they are intended to use for the AWS products. And then similarly, you can add block terminology. Like, for example, if you want your developers not to disclose certain product names that you use internally, so you can prevent them from using such words by blocking the keywords. By default, AWS repost private blocks profanity and certain other words that are not recommended for using to protect the community. But in addition, you can provide your own blocked keywords and terminology. And once you are done with that, you can continue to the next step. So the last step is really specifying your topics of interest. As Nitin mentioned earlier, you can specify topics of interest for your builders. For example, if you're running workloads related to analytics and storage, and if you're interested in well-architected framework, you can specify those topics of interest and then launch your private repost. So once you do that, your private repost is ready for your developers to start using. So that's a three-step process. Now, I'll walk you through how the developers can log in and start using the private repost capabilities. So to start with, first they can log in using the single sign-on method that you have specified. Like I mentioned, you can use either the IAM Identity Store or your own single sign-on integrated. So they can log in, and once they log in, they will go to the welcome screen with the branding that we have specified. And then the user has to complete their profile in order to start accessing the service. So they can provide their username, display name, and email address. And then they can also specify the language of preference. So we support 6 languages in the user interface and for knowledge sharing. So the language that is the interface and notification language is the language that is displayed in the user interface, and the user can choose that. And then the content language is the language that the user would like to consume, and they can choose these 6 languages. So we currently support these 6 languages. And once they choose these languages and set up, and then they can complete their profile, and they're ready to start using their service. So at this point, in the home screen, they will see a set of selections that are curated based on the topics of interest that the administrator has selected. So the topics of interest, I will jump into it and then describe it a bit more a little later. But before that, once the user signs up, the admin can set up specific roles. So without the user signing in, the admin won't be able to know who the users are, and they won't be able to set up roles. So the roles are expert, moderator, and support case creator. So Nitin mentioned earlier about these roles. So in order to do that, administrator can go to administration, and then go to permissions tab and select the users. So there are 3 types of users. Expert users can review answers on your private repost and make sure that they are validated. And then moderators can ensure the service is protected in terms of abuse and other aspects. And then support requesters can create support cases directly from the conversations on private repost. So you can see that admin user is by default moderator, and then we have selected an expert user and assigned expert role. Similarly, selected another user and assigned support role, which means they can create support cases, AWS support cases. So once these permissions are set up, the users are now ready, and they can start performing those actions. And as you can see, all users have multiple roles assigned here. So next is how do the user log in and browse and stay engaged. So once they log in, they can browse and stay engaged. Like I mentioned, based on the topics of interest, they can see the selections. In this case, there is an example how to optimize costs when you're using Amazon Aurora workload. So here we have carefully curated high-quality content around cost optimization for Aurora by curating resources from different locations. This also includes best practices and how you can manage cost. So we have some curated set of selections available, and we feed it as part of based on the topics of interest. But in addition, you can also create your own selections. So going back to the home page, in addition to selections, you have questions, and then popular topics and leaderboard. And then when you go to the questions tab, there are a couple of questions that are posted already, and then there are no community articles. So you can go and publish a community articles. In the interest of time, I'm not demonstrating the complete flow on publishing articles, but you can publish community articles, and then you can also publish selections. So the way you can create selections is you can specify the metadata around a selection, and then the description, and you can create a section, just like how you create table of contents, and then organize different assets under that selection in the form of a curated learning path or curated content assets. And then we have tags and topics. So tags are, like I mentioned, AWS services or AWS technologies, in addition, custom tags that you have created. And then we also have topics. Topics are aggregation of multiple tags, like Nitin described earlier. You can follow a topic or a tag to stay informed on the updates. For example, if a content asset is posted related to the tag or topic, you will be notified via email notifications. In this case, I'm following a couple of topics of interest. And then when you go to my dashboard, you can see the gamification there. So for this user, you already earned 40 points for completing your profile. And then there are different gamification tiers that users get. And then you can define, in future, we plan to add custom badging, and you can add badges to define the engagement and ensure that users are engaged. In addition, as part of my dashboard, I can see my questions, my answers, and all the content that I contributed. And also, I can see my activities as a user. So these are the activities. I logged in, asked a question, followed a topic, and all of that. And then the next step is searching content from AWS repost. So in addition to the content that is privately available to you, you can also search public content that is available on AWS repost directly from your private repost. So here, when I perform this search, there are two tabs. One is private results, and second one is public results. I can see there is a knowledge article that is available from public repost in line with my search criteria, and then I can click and directly access that within my private repost experience. And then in terms of, there is a permalink as well that will take you to the actual external public repost, and you can always come back. As you can see, the experience is different between the public repost and your private repost. Next is create private discussion threads on public repost on your public content. Like Nitin mentioned, you can, if there is a thread that is public and if it's of interest for you, and for example here I'm looking to see how to delete branch in code commit, and as a developer they want to make sure that if it works from there in their context and in your context, so then you can specify. You can click on Start Discussion Thread, and then you can ask a question within your private environment related to that public content. And once you ask that question, you can tag questions using standard AWS taxonomy or your custom tags. In this case, it's tagged with code commit, and then you can click on Post Question. This question is now posted. And any community member within your community can take a look and respond to this question. On this question, for example, somebody has responded, but we want to make sure it is validated. So back on the experts, so like Nitin mentioned earlier, we have the expert role where experts can review and validate answers to make sure they are accurate, ensure that there is trusted knowledge that is available for your developers. So in this case, experts can click on review button. That button is only enabled for folks with expert role. And then depending on the type of response, in this case it looks correct, and then expert can review and validate that answer. And as you can see, it says expert has validated this answer and reviewed and validated by them. So it earns trust in your community and make sure that the content is up to date and accurate. And the last capability that I want to demonstrate today is creating a support case directly from your private repost. So for users with support role permission, they can create a support case. This is not created. This role is not provided for everybody. Like I demonstrated earlier, admin has designated certain individuals with this particular role, and they can create support cases. You can see there is a button to create support cases. Once you click on that, you can take the complete thread and create a support case from here. In this case, I'm directly creating a support case to our support team, so I'm just adding a flag to indicate that it's a test case, and then create support case. And then you will get a confirmation saying that the support case is created for this particular thread. And you will see two tabs in the answers section. One is the support case and answers and comments. Everything under answers and comments is private to your repost, and it's private within that context. Whereas the support case tab, everything that is posted under the support case tab is visible to the support engineer as well as the individual who has the support role permissions. So in this case, this content is posted here, and once support responds, you may decide to close this thread because you got the response that you're looking for, and you can click on the resolve this thread button. And when you click on that button, you'll be asked a question if you want to kind of make this conversation private or make this public to your private community, meaning Do you want all your developers to access this thread? In that case, you can select review and publish. If you publish, it will be available for everybody. But if you decide not to publish, resolve without publishing, then it will be available and visible only to the support role creators. Now this thread is published and visible to everybody. That way, this knowledge can be used by your developers. Even though it's a one-on-one conversation between you and support, this knowledge can be reused. So that's kind of the last capability that I wanted to demonstrate. And with that, I'm excited. Like again, try your private repos today. It's available for free for 6 months, and I'll leave a moment to scan the QR code. And would like to thank you. Thanks for your time again, and thanks for joining us. We will be available here.